Welcome to All Basket Hangout. I'm Gerolf and this is Vandil. And today we're going to be talking about riches.
Yes, because we didn't talk about enough in our previous video.
Yeah, we always like talking about money even though we're not all that good at making it. But actually, to elaborate, our point is that, we often mention that games are something of a pretty good way to teach people stuff. And of course, not in the same way that books teach people. When you read a book, you sort of get, yeah, sure, books can be pretty large, but you're still getting like a condensed piece of information, or basically you're getting information in a condensed volume, so to say. Whereas when you're playing a game, you don't expect to be learning something every minute or every page or whatever. The idea is that you play a game, and because you get that interactive experience that is a game, then you sort of become interested in the world and you remember and learn stuff about the world. Say if you play something like Metal Gear Solid, then you start to learn about the guns that are in the game. And if you play something like Grand Theft Auto or Saints Row, then you start to learn about cars, just because you're driving around in a bunch of them. And if you play a game like World of Warcraft or Skyrim, then you learn about, well, all sort of stuff, like old weapons and armor types and materials for those, iron and copper, and how to make bronze and so on. So it's just that the fact that you're getting that experience and you're interacting with that game, in that you don't learn as much as you would from a book, but you internalize it a lot better because you're actually experiencing that world. And in that sense, what we were thinking, games are already somewhat good at teaching you money handling. But the way that games usually teach you about money handling is that basically they teach you that loans are something that doesn't exist, or that are a bad thing. In most games you can't really take a loan or have any sort of credit, or you can't go to a bar and say that, hey, put it on my tab. So you need to earn your money first, and only then you can buy the stuff that you want. But we were thinking while that is a good thing to learn, it is also troublesome in the way that, loans and credits and that sort of stuff are a real thing. And if you learn, or if you ever take those, it's important that you'd also learn how to manage those and how to live with those. So in that sense, what would be a game system that you could incorporate into any sort of, more or less any sort of game, like Skyrim or Call of Duty or even FIFA, I don't know, whatever game, and it would not just teach you that, loans don't exist and you should always earn your money before you spend it, but maybe it would also teach you or make you have this experience of, what if I run out of money? What if I go in the negative? And, how do I survive from there? And how do I make sure that I don't go there? So that would be a very interesting thing for a lot of games to teach us or make us internalize that sort of idea. So the one thing that we've been talking about, or what would be the first step to going into that direction, would be currently, if you play a game like Skyrim or any other RPG, you can't really go into like a net negative money amount. The least amount of money you can own in any game usually is 0. And I guess the first step to start with that would be, what if you allowed your characters to go into net negative?
So that would mean you go into a store and then you see a weapon or armor you really like that would really fit your character that you are building, but you don't have the money for it. So the clerk or the shopkeeper would then allow you to buy it with some kind of note or credit or a loan, or you have to go get a separate loan and come with that money to that shopkeeper.
So basically, you'd get some sort of IOU sort of paper from somebody, and in return, you do get that item.
Yeah, if you put a shopkeeper to allow that, then it would really mirror the real world in that many shops nowadays allow you to buy with some sort of, is it a credit or this kind of payment plan?
Yeah, installments.
And you just go, because they do that because it's very easy. You go there and you really want that new computer, and then the shopkeeper says, well, we have this plan for you that you can pay in these installments for 1 year, and you can get the item now, but you have to worry about the money later or in longer amount of time.
Yeah.
Essentially. So that would be better if we are going this route of teaching people about the real world money mechanics.
So there's an obvious problem with that if you take any RPG, say, that exists right now, and you put that system in there without considering anything else, then that's of course a problem, because you can immediately buy sort of the most expensive weapon in the game and the most expensive armor in the game. And now you're the strongest, you're at your strongest, and it takes all the sense of progression away from the game, because you just immediately get all the best stuff. So, of course, you'd have to take that into consideration. And the way to do that, for example, would be that I can imagine two systems immediately. The first is that even if you go to the store and you look at the most expensive item, it's so expensive that maybe there's some system there that the shop clerk actually looks at you and is like, we don't really trust you. I mean, you're somebody who came from another village, and you sort of need to up your reputation first.
Right, yeah.
So that's one way to do it. And another way would be, of course, basically make the whatever tasks you can get around there to make it not really worth the effort of getting that best item, because even if you're like fully equipped, you can still only like kill giant rats and wolves and some basic enemies around, and you're not really getting enough money from around there to actually pay off those items. So now you'd be, actually I think that would be pretty interesting, because that would sort of, you'd go to the shop and you'd sort of see that, oh, I can get the best item, why wouldn't I? And so you do that, and now you're in trouble, because you just can't really muster the money to pay back what you just bought.
That's the next step. What's the trouble you're gonna get into? At the end of the day, money is just money, but in a game it really has to somehow make your game worse somehow. Without it being tedious, I'd say, or you have to always have this way to redeem yourself somehow. So, well, in a setting like Skyrim, it's pretty obvious that one method would be just put some guards run after you, put you into jail.
Yeah.
Or something, or might they cast some kind of spell on you? That would be very interesting to make it into a fantasy kind of, what repercussions you would get in the fantasy world.
Yeah.
They would cast some kind of curse or spell on you that activates once you are not paying the money back.
And of course, depending on the game, I think one, of course, possibility is that if we consider like a non-magical means, it could just be that, you know, because you're in debt, you're in heavy debt, that means that the shopkeepers don't really trust you anymore, so they refuse to sell anything to you, for example.
Yeah.
So, or even buy anything from you.
But if you change location, the word might have not gotten around yet, and you could start anew, essentially. You could really screw up your game like that, going from town to town and always buying everything in credit, and at some point you just... Yeah, that's... I'm getting very interested. This someone might say that get this real life problems out of my game, but I'm really intrigued about this. And one thing for the magical approach would be if that curse would be tied to that item you bought. It would be an enchantment on that item, and it would turn against you somehow.
Yeah. It can be something lenient, like it's not as powerful anymore, or it breaks more easily. Or it can be something much more sinister, like it's stuck to your hand, for example. You can't get rid of it. And basically the only way to basically undo that curse is to pay off your debts or something.
And if you want to go even more deep with that, you could also give players means to get rid of that enchantment. Maybe you can become a very adept magician who can then overturn that curse. Then that would become its own game on itself, having this kind of deep mechanic of getting rid of curses that make you unable to use your item or make your life more miserable. There needs to be repercussions for not pay your debt back. And of course, the more expensive item you're buying, the bigger the installments are gonna be. So that's gonna be a hindrance in the beginning, because of the amount of money you can get is some few coins per enemy, and the death you're paying is something like hundreds of coins. So it's never gonna be worthwhile at the beginning. So that's already a hindrance to not go for the biggest item.
Yeah.
Or the greatest items right away.
That actually reminds me that there's one game that, well, it doesn't really have this kind of system, but it has, for a little while, it has something similar. And that's, well, it's a game that I keep mentioning in almost every video. So Kingdom Come Deliverance, it starts with you basically getting thrown out of your hometown, and the sort of first home or base that you have, you're basically working at a friend's, I guess it was uncle's place, who is a miller, and you have a bed in that house basically. But the problem is that, you know, he had to pay for all your sort of medical treatments to get you back on your feet, and now it doesn't really show in your inventory, but in a sense you have a debt to him and to the local what is like a potion seller or healer or whatever. And what happens is that I never run to this during my first playthroughs, because of course I paid the debt off as soon as I could. But in one of the later playthroughs, I was just gathering money and gathering more and more money, and I didn't even remember about the debt. And I was walking out of a city, and a couple of thugs basically stopped me, and they were like, "Hey, you haven't paid that guy. Do you want to beat up?" And they were like, "You better pay it soon." And so that's one thing that happened. And the other thing that happens is that I tried to go to my bed and sleep, and I noticed that usually when you look at the bed that sort of is yours, so to say, it says sleep and save. So you can sleep and save the game at the same time. But now it said just sleep. And when I tried to go to sleep, the miller would come there and he would wake me up and keep asking like, what the hell are you doing here? So that's another thing. So in a sense, my property got taken away from me.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. So that sort of repercussion could also be interesting in that if you say own any sort of house in Skyrim or Grand Theft Auto or whatever, you would just get evicted, or basically some sort of or basically the town or the village would take that property away from you.
It's really nice they took that into account.
Yeah.
I really want to break this down into a pure game mechanic. So the means can be, or the how you present it can be anything. You can just use your imagination, like we talked about, using enchanted weapons or curses or people coming after you. But all in all, it's just about you having this bag of money that you can accumulate with tasks, or if it's a sports game, then you are just getting money from the victories or anything, or sponsorships.
Yeah.
Anything, you get that money somehow, and it vanishes from there because of your choice to buy something that you can't afford right now, but you have to pay it back. And one other thing is that it's always more expensive to buy with loan than to buy the item straight up.
Yeah, of course.
The end cost will be higher, and that's why they are really keen on giving you those credits or credit payments or loans, because they get extra money for it at the end.
They get the interest.
Yeah. So basically it's just about that vault of money getting bigger, the amount getting bigger, and it getting smaller from these debts you have accumulated. And the trouble will be keeping that money big enough to be able to make more investments into your character or into your sports team or into your military or your weapons, anything. And that's the basic idea of this system we are trying to imagine here.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that somebody might have a problem with the fact that, you know, if you have a loan like this in a game, how does the money sort of keep disappearing from your pocket or whatever?
Yeah, that's when your imagination or your concepting comes into play. You have to think about the world. If it's the football simulation, then it's natural. You take loan from a bank and they are taking that money from your account every now and then.
Yeah.
But if it's fantasy world, then you can start coming up with this magical stuff. Or if it's a Middle Ages setting, then you can go with these thugs running after you. You have this kind of ability, or you can run away from that death as much as you want, because it's only about the people catching up to you. So that's might be really interesting. You trying to keep away from those who try to get their money back.
2 points about that. First of all, if we look at a game like I've been playing Port Royal 3, and in that game, basically the amount of money that you have is both something that you always have with you, but it's also something that all of your sort of fleets have with them. So in that sense, I would encourage anybody to not think too hard. If it's too hard to implement, you shouldn't be afraid to just imagine that you're a traveler and the money just disappears from your pocket, because even though from a design standpoint it may seem stupid, but at the same time, like in Port Royal, it feels very natural in the end and very handy, so to say, that it has there isn't any sort of complicated system that you need to leave the money somewhere and it gets taken away from there. But the second thing is that I actually really like that that thugs coming after you effect. Just because it really makes you feel the effect of a loan. In that, let's say that every 3 days some thug sort of spawns near you and they come running to you and they ask you for the money.
Yeah, it kind of manifests the feeling of guilt
Yeah.
some people have about the loan being unpaid.
Yeah.
And some people don't have that, so it would be very powerful way to make you experience that loan, having a loan, someone is gonna get it, is gonna come to get it from you.
Yeah. And especially because in real life, loan doesn't really feel like that because, of course, every seller is trying to make, getting the loan and having the loan as much of a good experience as possible so that you keep taking loans or paying in these installments and so they get more money. But we could actually use the thug system in a game to sort of indeed manifest what it actually should feel like. It is somebody coming to you and knocking on your door or just coming to you suddenly and hey, where's my money? You better pay it now.
I somehow got this way out of the box idea. I don't know if it's out of the box, but this crazy idea of you having this very intense moment, you're trying to beat the boss, kind of Dark Souls style, and then someone comes and stops you right in the middle, and the game doesn't pause, it just stops you from doing stuff, and there's a man yelling at you, you haven't paid your debt, and then the monster just slays you, standing there.
Just like the Skyrim giants. It just hits you and you fly high into the air.
Or even further, the lone or the thug just comes and kills the enemy. This is what's gonna happen to you if you're not gonna pay it.
Yeah.
You miss your experience points from not dealing with that boss, and
maybe they drag the corpse away too, so you can't loot it either.
Yeah, but that's also something you can go crazy with this, especially if it's some fantasy setting. You can make the lone guy some omnipotent wizard who can see you at all times. It's gonna be more like a god seeing you, but it can be anything.
Yeah, I mean it can be something like what would you say, like a council of paybacks or the loan council or whatever, council of installments. So basically they just teleport next to you in like a proof of fire or something. And all right, I'm here to collect my payment. I mean, there is a guy like that in Ultima 8, who is like it's not about money, but if you attack any civilian in the game, then they scream for help, and this guy just appears in a pool of fire, and he's like, "What's going on here? Oh, I see you're attacking civilians here. All right," and he just snaps his fingers, and your character explodes into like bits of arms and whatever. So it could be something like that as well.
Oh yeah, I'm reminded of King's Quest 3. I think has this mechanic of once in a while wizard teleports right in front of you, and if you have certain items in your pocket, the wizard will just kill you. It's game over, and you have to. It's very tedious, but it has an interesting concept that you have to hide the certain items. They are marked with an asterisk, so you can at least know what they are, but you have to go all the way back to your room and hide them under your bed before the countdown goes to 0 and the wizard appears to see what you've been doing. That's also something you could kind of give the players some means to try to evade that. Maybe you can hide the items or...
This feels actually the other way around in that it could even be that money is something that you don't usually want to carry with you, but if you have this loan, then you always do have to keep a certain amount of money with you because the thugs can come at any point to collect it. So it's actually the other way around.
Yeah, well, in real life you usually get the plan, or you know when the money is gonna get out of your account. But in a game setting, it could be interesting also that it's somewhat random. You don't really know on what day they will come, and if it's it might be a very unfortunate event or in a place or in a situation you really don't want to lose that money. You're just about to find something or something incredible is gonna happen, having a lot of money, and then suddenly someone comes and takes the crucial amount of it away.
Yeah, if you do decide to sort of take this system and want to make it even more robust, or even want to focus the whole game on it, then you could even have like these different banks all around, or basically not even banks, but like different people who are those people that loan the money to you. And maybe some of them are like people that you can sort of, or I'd guess you could say that none of them are the type that you can really trust. Everybody has their own like bad sides, but like one of them could be like they give you the loan with very low interest or something like that. But the bad side there is that they indeed do come collected as random points, because basically if you consider this person who is loaning all that money, maybe they are somebody who is a bit haphazard. So they're somebody who's running out by themselves pretty often. So they realize that, okay, there's somebody who wants to loan more money, but I don't have any. So let's go. They just send those thugs to collect the money from people, and that includes you. So you may indeed get interrupted at any given point. And one of the banks may be something like, maybe it's some sort of centralized bank, so they don't actually come to collect you. You need to go to them to pay that amount. And if you don't, they just immediately send assassins to get rid of you or something. So every single bank could have their own bad sides and good sides. That actually reminds me, I heard some story at some point of a guy who said that he spent, was it like something like $3,000 on a frisbee. And the whole story was actually that, he was a student and he was deciding, which bank should I get, this bank or that bank? Where do I put my money into? And one of the banks was saying that, if you come here, you get a free frisbee. But the problem was that in that bank, actually, I think they had something like, if you have your money in that bank, then you have to pay like a monthly fee or something. And in the end, he had his money there for a really long time. And the end result was that he basically had to, or he ended up paying like $3,000 worth of those banking fees. And in that sense, that frisbee that he never really even used ended up costing him $3,000. So that sort of reminded me that maybe one of the perks is that, one of these banks is just, they're enticing you to take a loan from them because they give you some weapon or some nice decal or something really useless, but something that you may think, even as a collector, that I really want this, so I'm going to go there, even though actually that's the bad place to go.
We have gone now to the territory of not so much a mechanic that you can implement on any games. This is kind of now branching into how you can make this a mechanic on its own and maybe create an entire game out of this.
Yeah.
But the basic idea stays the same as I described way back already.
And I'd still like to focus on the point that if you consider that, this is something that sounds like a lot of work to put into your game. But let's say if you're making a game that's already about something where you can maybe do some bad stuff. So if there's already some sort of guard system, if there's some sort of way to attack civilians, then this probably isn't like all that much to add to that. Of course, considering that you don't have to go all the way, or you don't have to put on all those different banks there or anything. You can just make your sort of light system where you can get the loan straight from the, or you can just put it in a shopkeeper's like tab or something, and just the fact that you now have sort of negative money or something that may just affect some things in a different way. Or in the most simplest forms, it can even just be that you can buy sort of anything that you find. But if you have negative money, then nobody, of course, you can't buy anything at that point. It's sort of the same as having zero money normally.
As long as there's that way of redemption for you also put into the game, and it might be that just you just go slaying rats as long as you've gotten that 1,000 coins worth of negative, and now you're at zero, and now you can start getting to the positive side.
That could actually work in the sense that if we consider like old JRPGs, or I guess even modern JRPGs, the way those games usually work is that when you get to the first village, of course, they're not going to offer the best items in the game. The way it usually works is that you go around and you grind enough money for yourself, and then you buy the best stuff that you can at this village. But it's not going to be anywhere near as good as you can buy in the next village. But in this case, you could just sort of go into this town and you could buy all the most expensive gear, and now you're at negative. And now you can continue your journey if you want to. But then when you get to the next village, if you haven't grinded enough to get to sort of some amount of positive amount of money, then you can't buy any more items there.
Actually, you just described the benefit of loans, and that's getting that leverage for you to get ahead of your journey or your life in real life. If you buy those best items, you don't have to go back to that town. You can buy them now and then go to grind. And not the other way around, like it's usually done. You get to this village and then you realize you don't have enough money, then you go grind and then you come back.
So my problem with this system that I just explained is that it doesn't really focus on the negative sides all that much. And I think that's a bit of a bad thing, because it means that if you play, let's say that every game since the 80s or every RPG since the 80s would have had this specific system, then it means that everybody who's played those games would have gotten basically used to the idea that you just buy whatever with a loan and then you do stuff. And you would never sort of, or some of the people would of course realize that of course there's the interest that you have to pay in real life. But everybody else would sort of have in the back of their minds sort of this connotation that loans are a good thing and I should always take them.
Yeah, because games are safe in that way that you are in an RPG, you always know that by beating the enemies you get money. That's the trope in those games, and you know it. Because for you to get the loan, especially if you are going to go to the bank and get a big loan, they really want to know how you're gonna make it paid back.
In real life,
you have this kind of plan in an RPG. It's just a very easy way. You know that you can get your money by defeating enemies. But if you want to get people to learn this making a plan bit, then you really have to put something more into it. Because that's really important, knowing you need to be really informed when you take a loan. You know exactly how you're gonna pay it back. You have the plan and plan B and plan C probably.
In a game, the game developers have made that plan for you. It's just you follow the plot, so to speak, or you just go out and adventure and you're getting money. But in real life, indeed, it's more different, because maybe you don't have the means to pay it back, or you do have, but it can be can be more dangerous, because maybe you do have a job and it means that you can pay it back in, I don't know, 5 or 10 years, but can you be sure that you have that job for another 5 or 10 years? Who knows?
That's why those who know a loan can be an asset, they also know to calculate in the risks and take that into account in their calculations of is the loan gonna be worth it or not. And this is something that's really nice for everyone to learn at some level at least. That there's also loan is bad if you hadn't planned for it, but it can be a really valuable asset also. I've always feared loans to the death. I really I don't really like the idea of getting a loan, then you have this place you have to pay back to, but that's also a hindrance for my success in life, that I don't have the courage to take the loan because I don't know how I would use that. So maybe games that have this kind of system could somehow make you used to the idea that it is scary, but you can start making plans for it, and it might even make you succeed even better than if you hadn't taken the loan.
Yeah.
That's something I don't really know how a game would. Because how do you know you got a better outcome from taking the loan versus have not taken the loan?
I think it could work quite well, because if you consider that there's a lot of games that revolve around speedrunning, and speedrunning in a lot of games comes basically back to that point of sort of having the knowledge of what you need, what are the like minimum amount of steps you need to do, and the specific things that you need to take to sort of capitalize your character and make them as strong as possible. For example, in Diablo 2, I think one of the most popular speedrun methods is to use the Amazon character. And as far as whenever I played that game, the Amazons have, I think, 2 options for the most part for weapons. They have bows with arrows and they have spears. And spears, if you look at the game, they're pretty much useless. Because the whole point of that game, if you have a sort of a permanent weapon like a bow, then it can have enchantments. So you of course want to have that because you can get better and better bows. But with like these throwing javelins, or spears, javelins there are actually. I don't think those are really enchanted, so you don't really care about those. But the most popular way to speedrun the game is actually to put all your sort of talent tree points into this skill that makes whenever you shoot or throw a javelin, it forms like these poisonous clouds. And the best way, because I think bows and arrows, they cost a little bit more, so the speedrunners just take these javelins, like the cheapest javelins in the game, and they always just replenish those and they just keep throwing them around, and wherever the javelin flies, it forms multiple poison clouds around, and then they just throw those around and run away from the enemies, and the enemies will run to those poison clouds and die eventually. So that's like the best strategy, or one of the best strategies to do a speedrun in that game. And once again, it feels like something that you couldn't even think of as a normal player trying to play the game. But at the same time, it requires a lot of information, so it's clearly somebody having that information and using it to their advantage to sort of do things much more efficiently in the game. And in that sense, I'd imagine that, being able to take a loan, it's just about, do you have some sort of strategy in the game? Okay, I can take 1 million money immediately, but where am I gonna use it to sort of be able to speedrun the game, or do basically be a lot more efficient in the game?
Games are usually about this short-term rewards. They always give these dopamine spikes in your head with their trophies and achievements and everything you get in the game.
Even level ups and quests are usually and pretty short, right?
Yeah, and the effects you get into your eyes from the screen. So how you describe that Diablo speedrunning, it just brings to my mind this a good game that wants to teach you about handling money also wants to teach you about thinking in the long term. And that's actually what's in the essence of this talk we're talking about, this teaching you to handle money. You can try to think things further in your life, not just tomorrow or week from now, but you could also think about 10 years from now or 5 years from now.
Yeah.
So a game is very well positioned in kind of getting you get these experiences of long-term planning in a way that in a game a full day doesn't take you a full day to play. It will take some minutes, or 15 minutes is one day, so you get this condensed or shorter amount of time where you can experience this kind of long-term planning.
Yeah, that's one of the main reasons why I'd really hope that games would sort of simulate this sort of experience, because indeed in real life, I know because we put some money into stocks, and that's something that it can be really hard to like even imagine the end effect. It just feels like, okay, I put like $1,000 into something, and I'm not really seeing the effect. But then in maybe 10 years, maybe that $1,000 has now, maybe it's $2,000, maybe it's $3,000, whatever, or even much more. It can be multiplied by quite a bit. So that's something that games would basically allow you to experience in like a much shorter time, so that you sort of already get that experience or that knowledge in your head that, yeah, maybe this is something that I should try out. But at the same time, it is important that the game also lets you experience like the dangers of it. But also the fact that there's not just the dangers, but if you're missing something, or basically even if something seems to work in a game pretty easily, it may not work in such a way in real life because you're missing something. I think we were talking about the quests at the time. So the reason that quests work in games is that somebody has already sort of made those quests for you. But in real life, if you want to have like this long-term plan, then you're the one who needs to do those tasks for yourself, and you're the one who needs to write that plan and think up that plan. So in that sense, it may be that, yeah, taking a loan could be a good thing, but if you're missing this plan, if you're missing the ability to think, what am I going to use this money for, then in that case, taking that loan is not a good thing. And that would be a good thing for games to teach. That same thing in the game. If you take a loan then and you don't really know what to use it to, then you would get penalized or suffer something for it, and it's not a good plan for you.
Games themselves are these plans or quests. Someone has made a story for you to. You have to go and slay that last boss in the game. Your goal is to get to the end of the game, and that on itself is, you have a goal and you know what to do. You play the game to get to that end.
Yeah.
So for a game to teach you to start making yourself kind of some plans, what you're gonna do. Games already do that, I already said that. But to make the game teach you to make your own plans, kind of, or somehow, or sometimes you just roll with it, some parts of your plan, or you don't even have a plan at the start, but you start feeling around for what you want to do.
Yeah.
Or what you're gonna do, or what you're best at. You can try things out, and then you realize, oh, I really enjoy grinding. I really enjoy going just in the same place and whacking all the enemies there. Somebody enjoys that, but then someone might see, oh, there are quests that give me bigger money. They are more planned ahead for me, or I have to go faraway lands, to faraway lands to get the money, but the payout will be bigger because of the effort I had to make to clear the objectives of that quest.
I think that's an interesting point in that traditionally, I mean, I've talked about this myself, that I really like that games have an ending. That it's not just something that goes on for forever and ever. But at the same time, I think that's a good point in that, you know, once again, I've been playing Port Royal 3 lately, and in that game, well, what I did was I started one of the tutorials. There's like a trading tutorial, and then there's like a combat tutorial. But how the game works is that the trading tutorial, at some point the tutorial part ends, and what the tutorial actually is that it's story mode, so to say. And when it ends, that means that the story ends. So there's no more story there to be had. Now it's just free play. And there's no end to the free play. So that was actually kind of interesting. At first I was a bit like concerned, or I was feeling a bit down. It feels like I didn't have a goal anymore in the game. Like, okay, what am I gonna do now? I can buy more ships, I can get more money, I can train my captains, whatever. But I can keep doing that eternally. There's no end to that game. It's free play. But at the same time, it felt like now I was sort of in the helm of my own destiny, so to say. Now I had to make my own plan. What do I want to achieve in the game? And that was actually quite interesting. I don't think there's probably no other game I've played that has given me that. Except for maybe, well, I don't know if World of Warcraft it sort of goes in the same category, but for the most part, this is the first time that I actually had to like decide for myself when the game ends for me. I think that might work with this like sort of loan system, in that you have to also like make a plan for yourself. So basically give the player enough freedom that they have to do these sort of decisions. I don't know.
And use a well-crafted tutorial, or tutorial people that don't even recognize as a tutorial, but somehow eases you into this idea that you actually need to make some plans in a game. And this is very abstractly, we're speaking very abstractly, because how do you implement that? It's of course up to the game up to you in the context of the game you're making. And the best games of modern era are those Breath of the Wild or Elden Ring that give that freedom. They become these open world sandboxes where you have a goal, you have these points of interest or plot points that you can go towards if you want to. I don't know if Elden Ring has even that. I haven't really studied it that much to know how much it handholds you, but both these games, they give you the freedom. Just go out there. They give something for you at the beginning, and then you are just free to go wherever you want. So there is a trend of giving players these kind of games that aren't afraid of giving the reins to the player anymore. I think we had this kind of time in gaming when game developers were very worried that the player gets lost.
Yeah.
And they have to make these corridor games. Or
very afraid. And especially since they wanted to get like new players to get into it, and they were afraid that those players really don't know what to do, so we really need to hold their hand for a long time, and so on.
We already have these kinds of modern ideas, but a good game is it gives freedom to your players, and in that way I can see there could be a place, or there definitely is a place for teaching people this money handling and the benefits of loan and the dangers of having a loan, and put this kind of system in a game, and it will give people some tools that they might really benefit from in their real life, even without realizing it. And that's the beauty of games, that you don't actually know how much they've taught you at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because they've really taught you a lot. You just don't realize it.
And they did it in a safe environment, so to say. You can take a massive loan and sure you get a game over of some kind, so to say, or the game experience becomes bad or whatever. But hey, your real life doesn't suffer in that sense. You're not indebted for the rest of your life.
There is also the other side of the coin of playing too much of the game and running away from your life with those games, but that's not the fault of the games themselves. That's the problem in people are different, and that's a whole other topic. We are not experts on any psychology or these human. We are just couch psychologists who like to talk about these things. But yeah, instead of playing games of making kids stay up late at night, you could also think that maybe they are teaching important life lessons, maybe even the usage of money. Maybe someone can make something out of our ramblings of today's video and make a real game that actually kind of manifests all this money stuff that we are surrounded by.
And finally, something that I was supposed to mention at the start of the video, but well, better late than never, is that of course, yeah, there are games that allow you to take loans, like Team Hospital, and I guess I haven't actually played the SimCity series, but like all sort of these kind of simulation games, some of them have these systems where you can take a loan, but like those games are often for like specific people who like these simulation type of games, and I'm more hoping that we could get this kind of system incorporated into something more mainstream. As we said in the start, into Grand Theft Auto or Skyrim or Call of Duty or any kind of game like that. So here's to hoping that we'd get something like that.
Yeah, to the loan system in games.
Yeah, a better loan system than what we have in Animal Crossing, where you're forced to get a loan, and there's actually, I think there's no repercussions in that game actually to having that loan.
I don't think you even have any kind of time or something you have to pay it up in.
Yeah, I don't think there's any constraints. You just pay it up as you go. You might as well not have a loan because it's not a real loan really. That's our great loan system talk. And we still don't know how to end videos, so bye.
Yes, bye. Give us some comments, give some insight. Do you have any games in mind that might have this kind of system and we don't know about it?
Yeah, actually we'd really like to know about that, so...
Or if you're gonna make it, then tell us.
Actually, do it.
Yeah.
Do it. And tell us. Alright, bye.
Bye.
Bye.